Welcome. This is the Enlightenment Show, and I'm your host, Lauri Schoenfeld. This is where Chicken Soup for the Soul meets the artist way with Nancy Drew. Our guest today is Ryan Ray Harbuck, author of When I Grow Up, I Want to Be a Chair. We're going to be chatting with her today all about her new memoir and how she feels that we're all connected. Welcome, Ryan.
Hi, Lauri. It's nice to meet you and to see you and to be on today. I'm really excited to chat.
I'm so happy to have you here, Ryan, and to talk about your beautiful book. As I cried and I held it and I smiled, and it just was like a warm blanket of just connecting to someone on a deeper level. And I really appreciated that.
Thank you. And thank you so much for having me on today and for feeling that way. I think any author, that's what they really hope, is that somebody really connects and feels a bit of themselves in somebody else's work.
Yes. What is something that is playful in your life right now?
Playful, automatically I would go to my children. I have an 8-year-old and a 3-year-old, and they're the epitome of playful. And I think if anything, kids bring a light sense to your world and to your everyday. And, not only is it, being a mom, very serious work, it's also really remarkable to be able to just step back and play.
Mm-hmm. I love that, as I have 3, and I definitely agree. They constantly remind me to step back and take a breath and be in wonder.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And they see the world in such a unique manner and an expression too.
Yeah. They are for sure our teachers in so many areas.
Absolutely.
Can you share with our listeners and viewers what When I Grow Up, I Want to Be a Chair is all about?
Sure, I would love to. It is my memoir, so essentially it's my life story. It really does begin with, I was in a car accident when I was 16, coming back from a school dance with a group of friends. And I was ejected from the vehicle and suffered a spinal cord injury. So I have no movement or feeling from about my sternum level down. And that's really sort of the premise of the book, but it's so much deeper than that. And I was 16 when it happened, at an age when all you want to do is be independent and discover on your own. And all of a sudden, my entire life had changed, and it was really unclear to me as to what my new life was going to be like. And so my memoir really kind of follows that in my own discovery of what does it mean to be a paraplegic? What does it mean to be a 20-year-old? What does it mean to be all of these different things, and these just different paths essentially that I ended up following, and really sort of letting the universe guide me, but all the while really paying attention to the lessons that I was learning and appreciating the little things and really having a keen perspective on my moments of my life.
Mm-hmm. There's a huge transition for you, Ryan, as you were going from a school dance with friends to having the accident. What was a few things immediately after that accident that shifted for you?
So having had the accident, and having my life completely change, I learned really quickly to understand myself. And I learned I had to kind of grow up very quickly, because all of a sudden I recognized, especially after I got out of the hospital and sort of reintegrated myself with the real world and my peers, I learned really quickly that it was kind of my job to let everybody know that I was okay. And that was something that was kind of hard for me because I think from the very depths of my soul, I am an introvert. I am somebody that would much rather be like a wallflower in a setting. And all of a sudden, everybody knew who I was and what had happened. And I was a very visible change and a very visible reminder of that accident. And so it kind of goes without saying that I really had to kind of step out of myself a little bit to prove to the world, number one, that I was okay and I was going to be okay, but also that I was very capable. And I've always been very stubborn and wanted to be very independent and do things on my own without any help. But then all of a sudden, there were things that I actually needed help with, and I couldn't do them on my own. And so, I mean, even today, I still have to swallow a lot of pride when I'm at the grocery store and I have to ask somebody to hand me the milk from the top shelf. And there are moments when I come home from the store and my husband's like, "Where's the milk?" And I'm like, "I'm sorry, I didn't want to ask anybody." And there are a lot of things, but initially that just sort of realizing that I was okay and letting everybody else know that I was okay. And I think the other thing is dealing with any of your listeners that have had car accidents or tragic experiences that change your life within seconds. For the time that it takes to sneeze, my life and everybody in that car's lives were changed forever. And so just realizing the finiteness of the world and your life and your trajectory, you really don't have a lot of say sometimes in what happens. And to really I had to change my perspective and really develop a perspective of life in the sense that I have this moment right now, and I have no guarantee about anything else in this world beyond this moment. And so I need to be okay with that. And I also need to make the most of it. And so I think that my accident happened at a good time for me, being 16, because I was very naive and very much, I think that my brain was really centered around, well, how am I going to hang out with my friends? It wasn't, what had happened. It wasn't, I can't feel my legs. It wasn't, I didn't really go into a huge depressive state. And I think it was because I learned that that wasn't going to serve me. It wasn't going to do me any good to wallow in what had happened or to wish that there was something different for me that didn't serve me. And if I really wanted to go to the mall with my friends, then I needed to just suck it up and figure out how to get from A to B.
Mm-hmm. We have a comment coming in. Hi, Julia. Welcome. Julia Slack says, was anyone else injured? Did you support each other? Great question, Julia.
That is a great question. Thank you, Julia. So in the car, we were coming back from a school dance. And so there were 3 couples total in the car, 6 people. We were in one of those big SUVs. The driver of the car, it was her dad's car that she had borrowed for the evening so that we could all fit in. And so that could have led, nobody really knows why the accident happened, what kind of led up to the events. But our SUV, we were on a highway, and we ended up kind of veering across the highway, crossing the grass median and hitting a car head on. And so everybody in the car was injured. My boyfriend at the time, he was killed instantly. And he and I were in the very back, and I broke and flew out the side window from what they can just gather from the evidence from the accident. There were 2 people that suffered traumatic brain injuries, which we all ended up being in the same hospital for our rehab because it was for brain injuries and spinal cord injuries. And being a part of that world, I would take a physical injury over, I guess a traumatic brain injury is physical in itself, that it's affecting your brain physically. But one of my friends was in a coma. She had to, when she came out of it, she had to relearn how to talk, walk, eat. And that was really terrifying. to be a part of and to really witness and watch somebody that you loved not truly be themselves anymore. And so everybody was injured. I clearly was not the most injured of that vehicle. The car that we hit, the driver of that car was killed instantly as well. So there were 2 fatalities that night.
Your experiences, Ryan, of you had a back brace and you were hospitalized for quite some time. What were some of your experiences with both of those?
So the way that my memoir starts off is one of my favorite stories, because it was something that was, I would say, was not me, was not the way that I behaved. But my book starts off that it was a Saturday morning in the hospital and nothing was really happening. And so one of the other patients grabbed me and we broke out of the hospital and we took the bus to the mall. And so if you can imagine this 16-year-old girl, I had a back brace that went all the way up to my armpits, all the way down to where it was digging into my hips, a wheelchair that was too big and not mine. I didn't really know how to push it that well. I didn't have a lot of strength. At this point, I had been in the hospital for about 3 months. I spent the first month of it in ICU hooked up to a ventilator. And so by the time I was actually well enough to sit up and breathe on my own, I was really, really weak. And so I spent a lot of time just even trying to lift my own leg with my hand off of the bed. Like that was a lot of weight at that time. And so, but that event of me kind of breaking out of the hospital was a really, really formative moment of mine because it was my first taste of independence and probably my first taste of independence as a 16-year-old anyway, kind of breaking out and going to the mall with a friend. But then it was also this just like proclamation of like, wow, I can actually do things and I can do things that I may not have done before. And my life may be different now, but that doesn't mean that it's any less gratifying or accomplishing. So.
Mm-hmm. I was reading that section, Ryan, and I had scoliosis growing up. So I had a back brace. So I definitely resonated with you there on like in the armpits and the hips and the lack of movement that you can have with the brace all by itself, but then taking it to you being in a wheelchair and your weakness within your muscles. I can't even imagine not having that movement there, but then also trying to train your body to be in this new space that's very foreign.
Well,
for you.
you're right. And so this is sort of it's the beauty of it, and it's also a curse that being, somebody newly put in a wheelchair, I don't have any sort of bar to try to reach. I don't know what I should be able to do or what I'm supposed to do. I don't know what I should be able to accomplish or not. And so it was a blessing in the sense that I just did what I always wanted to do. And I think because of that was able to really push the limit a little bit and be able to accomplish more than I would have had I really stuck within my head and said, oh, well, I can't do that. But then it's also a curse because you don't really know what you are capable of and what you are supposed to do. There's a part in my book that I talk about having to return to high school after my accident and how I was so hung up on how I was going to carry my backpack. And if I was going to be cool enough to carry my backpack the way that everybody else did. And when you're 16, that's really what you're most geared toward is being like everyone else and doing the things like everyone else. And all of a sudden, no matter how hard I tried, I wasn't going to be like everybody else anymore.
Mm-hmm. I love, Ryan, so much how you brought in that the essence of you didn't know really what to expect. And so it was like you were challenging yourself on a completely different level that you didn't know. It's almost like you didn't know until it happened. And now you were testing yourself to see what you're capable in different areas, which I think is so beautiful in the growth journey of like constantly trying to find those pieces, stretching ourselves to see what we can do in any given situation.
Absolutely. And I think, to be quite honest, I think so much of it I didn't realize until after I had written it and gone back through some of the stories. My book took me about 15 years to write from start to finish. Yeah. And to be truthful, I didn't start it out to be a book. I just started writing one day, and I think that it was because I had some pain and some emotion that I didn't really want to house anymore. It didn't serve me, and so I started writing to get it out. And it wasn't until it was completely finished and I started going back through the editing process, and I realized that so many of the stories that I felt were important enough to write down, they all had the same theme. There was always this theme of vulnerability and the strength and power that somebody actually possesses when they feel at their most vulnerable moments is when you actually are the greatest.
Mm-hmm. Did you feel like as you were beginning to write things down that it was cathartic and healing for parts of your heart that needed to process?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I've even had a couple of people from my past that have approached me about, why did you write this particular story? Why didn't you write about all the really fun things that we did? Why did you write about the mean thing that I did to you? And it was because that was the thing that needed to get out of me. And I think it wasn't until I had clearly started to write a book. I was several chapters in before it was like, oh, this could be a book. But then I had to really separate myself a little bit from my life, and I had to create characters. Everybody's name in the book is not their real name because I had to make them characters. They couldn't be the people in my life anymore. And
Mhm.
so I really needed to kind of step out of myself a little bit in order, I think, to one, make it something that people would actually want to read. It's not just my journal and my stream of consciousness of trying to get pain out, but I wanted to be able to tell a good story too.
Mhm. Did you have moments when you were writing things down emotionally where you would take breaks to just kind of detox from everything that was moving through you?
Totally, absolutely. And I also had to get very creative about the way I got things on paper. I have a chapter in my book where it's a bunch of diary entries. And one of the greatest compliments that I've gotten was somebody said, "Wow, I can't believe you found all those diary entries and saved them." And I had to be honest, and I said, I made them all up. And it was because it was a really painful event for me, and it was the only way I could really get it out. And the diary entries run from a span of being, I don't know, like 13 and 14 all the way through my mid-20s. And it was really powerful for me to sort of channel that inner age. And so try to write the journal entry as a 14-year-old and then as a 17-year-old. And so and watch those moments sort of progress through. But that was truly I think the only way I could have written those events down.
Mhm. When you were 16 and 17 after your accident, what were a few ways that you helped yourself emotionally get through, the physical, emotional trauma that you were experiencing?
That's a great question. Um, However, I think so much of it was just being naive and being. I was always an athlete growing up, and so I think that I had a very sort of like sports mind about my wheelchair and my sort of rehabilitation, where it was kind of like, if I practice this, then I'll get better and be able to do this. And so if I want to be able to drive a car by myself, I have to learn how to take my chair apart and put it in the car. Okay. And so it's sort of like compartmentalizing a little bit. And really, like I said, I just really wanted to be a kid and hang out with my friends. And so I didn't really let myself dwell on what had happened that much. And I think it probably has snuck out in different ways and in different parts of my life. I think in my early 20s, I probably struggled a little bit, but who doesn't in their early 20s? And I think that I also, because at that young age, I learned that I had to sort of change my perspective and really sort of try to make the best of every day. It became part of my being, and so I don't, somebody actually asked me yesterday, "Do you have bad days?" And it was like, sure, but nothing about my accident or being in a wheelchair. Like, I have a bad day because my kid's mad at me, but beyond that, it doesn't feel like it's that ingrained anymore.
Mm-hmm. What are a few things you've learned on your self-realization journey?
I for sure have learned that in a lot of instances, my struggles and my victories have been the exact same thing.
Ooh, okay, can you say that one more time?
Sure. Sure. I have learned that my struggles and my victories are often the exact same thing. And I think that if you are willing to look at your own lives, I think that you would understand where I'm coming from a little bit in that regard as well. Because so many of our challenges that we are faced with are the things that really define us and the things that make us who we are, and also who we want to be and who we don't want to be the same moment. And so I think that so much looking back on my life, clearly everybody should write a memoir, because it is such a great way to sort of be able to figure yourself out. And, looking back through all of my life, I think that so many things I feel like have just fallen in place for me, in terms of like careers and having kids and meeting my husband. All these things have just kind of like fallen into my lap. But at the same regard, they've all happened because of challenges that I've faced and paths that I've chosen to take, whether I realized it or not at the time.
Mm-hmm. When did you decide, Ryan, as you've been writing for the past 15 years, when did you decide this is the moment I'm going to write a book?
When I was pregnant with my second child. And so for any of you that are parents out there, and as much as I hate to admit it, that when you become a parent, you lose a little bit of yourself. And not that it's gone forever, but your priorities change and the way that you run your day-to-day changes. And so when I was pregnant with my second, I will fully admit that I had a little bit of anxiety about that, and a little bit of, I don't want to lose myself entirely. And I knew that I had been working on this for so many years, and it was near completion. And so I really told myself that, like, this is a goal. I want to finish it. I want to publish it. I want to go all the way with this. And my book was published last February, and my child is 3. So it still took me a little bit of time to finish after I had this like triumphant, I'm going to do it right now. But one of the things that was so cool about writing it for 15 years is, you go back 10 years and I had outlined all the chapters of the entire book. And then the chapters started to change, and I started to delete things and things. I met my husband and had kids, all these things started to change. The entire last third of the book, it wasn't going to be that, because that didn't exist for me yet. And so it's kind of cool.
We always adapt as mothers, as life is always flowing and shifting constantly.
It is very true.
When do you typically like to write, Ryan? What's your ideal schedule that works for you?
Um, there is no such thing. I have no ideal schedule. I have learned over the last few years to be able to write in spurts of about 5 to 7 minutes. And because that is really all I have. And I have gotten really good, I will admit, at, okay, the kids are playing, open my laptop, and I can just zoom out, dozens and dozens of things in 5 to 7 minutes.
Mhm.
The majority of the book before I had kids, I spent a lot of time. I would just plan out, okay, I'm going to go to a coffee shop for 3 hours and I'm just going to let it all out. Um, and I would really love to get back to that at some point in my life, but that's just not what my reality is right now. And so to be able to take 5 to 7 minutes every other day and get some things on a page feels really good too.
Mhm. Have you noticed, Ryan, of just sitting down with that 5 to 7 minutes, how much you actually can accomplish when you just
Absolutely.
sit
It
into it?
surprises me. Yes, it
Mhm.
surprises me all the time, and it's because it's always here. And, there are moments when I'm walking my kid to school and I think of, "Oh, this would be a great story," or, "Oh, don't forget." And so I will, like, take out my phone and on my notes app, jot things down, and, inevitably I'll jot something down midnight as I'm, like, falling asleep, and then I go back and try to read it, and I have no idea what it's about. But my mind is always writing.
Mhm. Trying to put together the thought processes in the middle of the night. It's always interesting, isn't it?
It sure is.
What are a few common misconceptions that you feel people might have had about you?
Um, in terms of my wheelchair, I think that there are a lot of misconceptions, and um they're not created in an ill sort of
Mhm.
fashion. And everybody means well. I have learned that, and I think that probably my first few years in a wheelchair, I would get very grouchy about the way that people wanted to help me or think that I needed help when I truly didn't. But over the years, I've just realized that people are being people and they want to help and they want to be um, somebody that is doing good in the world. And it's really easy. Like I said, I have a very visible disability. And so it's really easy to look at me for the things that I don't have. And, um, and I understand that now, where I didn't in my earlier years of being a disabled person. And I appreciate people. However, like I said, I'm very stubborn. And so chances are I'm going to say no, thank you. um, but I also think that, in terms of misconceptions, I think I've had a misconception for myself. I looking back now, I think I've always been a writer, and I think that I've always this is something that's been inside of me, and it's been like knocking on my brain, telling me that it wants to come out, and I've always been doing other things. I I just had this memory the other day. It was really sweet. I was teaching my 8-year-old what a thesaurus was, and he thought it was like the neatest book that has ever been written. And I was like, "Yes, it is, baby. It totally is." And then I had this memory of I used to keep a thesaurus under my bed as a kid, and I would thumb through it and the words. And it's just like, gosh darn it, I was a writer then. Why didn't anybody tell me? I have a degree in biology and a degree in secondary education, and it wasn't until this year that I can now say that I'm a writer, and I feel like really awesome about that, and I feel really blessed, and the misconception that I've had is for my own self.
Mhm. I'm taking a moment to celebrate so hard that you came back to a lost dream. Yes, Ryan, it's
Yeah,
back.
thank you. Thank you, I appreciate it.
Doesn't it feel amazing when you reconnect to something like that? You have those memories and you come back to them. It just is magical.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you sort of realize that life is this journey that you have so much control over, and at the same time, um, no matter what you try to do or whatever path you try to veer on, you're going to end up at home.
Mm-hmm. Yes, always, always. Julia has a question. Julia Slack says, how did it affect your parents? Thank you, Julia.
Julia, that's a great question. And I have always said that my accident has affected my parents more than it has ever affected me. And I can say that as somebody that the accident happened to me. And so on some level, I have a little bit of control over that. I have control about how I feel and how I navigate my world because of it. And it is so much harder for a loved one to watch something happen to somebody else. And I think that everybody feels that. Everybody knows what that feels like to watch somebody else go through something traumatic, and you feel very helpless and you feel very lost. And I see it still in them today, both of my parents. And they have struggled themselves in different ways. Um, Even before my accident, I think my family was sort of falling apart a little bit. And so when my accident happened, it sort of accelerated everything. But it accelerated in a way that my family needed to kind of break apart in order for each of my parents to sort of heal and regrow in their own rights. And I would say that, you know, for lack of a better term, my accident still haunts both of them today.
Mm-hmm. That was a really great question, Julia, because we often do forget. Thank you for bringing that up and your honesty, Ryan, of how it affects everyone around you. Not just your experience, but all of our experiences affect the people around us as well.
Absolutely. I actually just had a book signing this last weekend, and I had a childhood friend show up that I have not seen in probably 20 years, maybe longer. And the first thing she said was, "I'm so sorry," and burst into tears. It was like, oh my gosh, like I wasn't prepared for that, and I wasn't prepared. I didn't need an apology for anything, and she said that she had so much guilt for after my accident not really being there for me, and
Oh,
I felt so deeply for this moment because I didn't see it that way. Nobody knew what to do. We were 16. And, when I came back to school, it was really challenging because I didn't know how to behave and my friends didn't know how to behave. And so I did lose a lot of connections when I came back to school initially, just because nobody really knew what to do. Um,
mhm.
and, and of course I don't blame anybody, and I didn't expect an apology from her, and I feel deeply that she's been holding on to this pain for this long. So absolutely.
Mhm. What do you love about being a mom, Ryan?
Oh, I love everything about being a mom. Um, as much as I don't love everything about being a mom. Sometimes I wanna change my name. My name's not Mom anymore. But no, I mean, I think, in terms of just my unique situation, I think that, I have really been able to offer, a perspective to my children without, really having to say a word, and they've learned a lot of compassion and a lot of, sort of like innate helpfulness without, things that you can't really teach a kid. And they are just both real hardworking kids. They are really kind hearted, and watching them grow and develop is really amazing. And I think that, um, when I first got pregnant, I think that that's something that I worried about is my paralysis going to impact who they are, and is it going to inhibit who they are? And I've even written a couple articles for Huffington Post about that topic, um, because it is a kind of a unique perspective. Not a lot of people in wheelchairs have kids, unfortunately. And just the things that I have been able to sort of, it's almost like these lessons just kind of ooze into my children of the things that I have spent gobs and gobs of energy and years learning for myself. They feel them too. And I feel really blessed that I can offer that to them.
Mm-hmm. How do you feel that we are all connected?
I think that we are all connected because we all have our stories that make us who we are, and we have our journeys that may be the most dissimilar thing on the surface, but they are all um, working towards just learning about yourself and being a better person within the world. And whether you really feel that way or not, that's what life is. And we're connected because we all have feelings and emotions. We have loss, we have pain, we have love, and we have grace. And um, oftentimes we don't stop enough to connect with each other in that way, um, which is really unfortunate. But I think that, you strip away all of the glitz and the glam, and everybody felt this when the world locked down from the pandemic, is we all were able to connect again. And I think that we all will always have the ability, and we always are intertwined much more than we will ever realize. And I think something that I always kind of consider is, if I'm, in a busy store, or, at the school playground, so everybody has a story. Everybody has those things that they're tied to, and those things that they are proud of, the things that they are not proud of. And we're all human, and we are all together.
Mm-hmm. It's one of the things that I love about what we're doing right now and about art, of there's that openness of connecting, but also understanding each other on where each one of us are.
Mm-hmm.
What you mentioned before, we may not be going through exactly the same things, but understanding like an element of loss or grief, pain, joy, like similarities, and then asking those questions to really invite conversation and connect.
Absolutely. And like I said, everybody should write their own memoir, because you end up finding the words for things that don't necessarily have words inside of you.
Mm-hmm. That's something too, Ryan. When you were writing your memoir, did you realize that the more you started understanding yourself and moving through that, the more you were able to understand people and have a different perspective too?
Absolutely. And I think that, especially once I was able to write down stories and create characters, I had to think for those characters as well. And because of that, it did really give me an opportunity to feel for other people in my life. But also, like you said, I really had to learn my true self, at the very deep depths of it. And because of that, I think that has given me more of an ability to look at others as well.
Mm-hmm. We're going to turn it to the inner child question segment. Are you ready?
Sure.
Okay. First question. When you were a kid, what was something that you did that was calming for you?
I had several Madame Alexander dolls. They are those like porcelain
Mhm.
dolls, and they are all different characters. I had Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz. I had Gretel from Hansel and Gretel. I had I probably had a dozen of them. They were from my grandmother, and I was not allowed to touch them. However, I would take them off the shelf, and I would just one at a time, and I would go under my bed, and I would play with their hair and their dresses, and just lay under my bed for hours. And so that is the absolutely first thing I thought of when you said calming.
Oh, my heart is feeling a lot of joy with your answer. My grandma used to give me Madame Alexander dolls every Christmas, and I completely forgot about that memory until
Oh, good. Well, I'm so glad to give it back.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that essence of like, these are the dolls that are just really don't touch. They are just for display.
Mhm. Yep, and I took them anyway.
Like, but I'll be gentle.
Mhm.
They're okay. Second question. If you could write a headline about your adolescence, what would it be and why?
Oh, that's a good one. It would probably be I never left my sister alone. And the reason being would be my sister and I are very polar opposite. And even to this day, I think we love each other dearly, but we don't have a lot in common. And we fought a lot as kids. But when our family was starting to kind of break apart, I was always very much willing to try to take care of my sister and to make sure that she was not struggling or left alone. And so there were times when I had to take her to choir practice, or I had to take her out of the house because my parents were fighting. And so that's probably where that would come from.
Are you the oldest, Ryan?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. I'm the oldest too, so I had that sense of a younger sister, and we're very polar opposites too, of just but lifting, during those moments.
Sure. Yeah.
Mhm. Third question. What is the oddest food combo that you've liked and tried, or you've just tried?
Oh, that's a good one too. Oddest food combo. Well, my oldest child loves pepperoni pizza with goldfish crackers mixed in. So I will say that as my answer.
Ooh.
As
So is he putting the goldfish on the pizza like toppings? Or how does that look?
Yes, and we will bake the pizza with the goldfish crackers in it.
Now, do you like it?
No, but I don't even really like pepperoni pizza. But will I eat it for him? Yes, I will.
I was trying to figure if that extra cheese actually worked or if it just doesn't at all.
It doesn't do much. But he loves it.
Before we end today, Ryan, can you share with our listeners and viewers what living a creatively abundant life means to you?
Living a creatively abundant life to me means just really being aware of who you are and the stories that live all around you. I think, especially since I now victoriously have called myself a writer, I feel like I'm constantly finding stories in my day to day, and it gives me the ability to really sort of slow down. One of the things that I've loved about my life and the way that I've learned to live it is that I've learned to actually stop time and put things in slow motion so that, metaphorically speaking, so that I can actually have a moment to myself and have a moment to think. And so creatively, that gives me the opportunity for my mind to create and having the ability to really just see the world in slow motion for a moment, even if just the most briefest time, to really watch the sun catch light on the dew, and what does that mean to me and what does that make me feel, and that's really, really important, and on some level that's really all that matters.
Mhm. Thank you so much for being here with us today, Ryan. It has been an absolute pleasure to chat with you.
Agreed. I've had a great time, and thank you to your listeners and the questions. I've had a really wonderful time too.
Where can our listeners and viewers find you if they have any questions after the show or want to find your book.
Yeah, that would be wonderful. I have a website, www.ryanrayharbuck.com, and I have links to just various things that I've written, my book, where to find it, and other interviews and things as well.
Mm-hmm. And before we end today, friends, every year on the Enlightenment show, I pick one book that is the winner, in my personal opinion, on books that really I connected to, that I felt deeply, and that I really, really want to highly recommend to you as a reader to go and get. Ryan, when I grow up, I want to be a chair, one for this year. Thank you
for that's so awesome.
Beautiful book, for sharing your heart and your story, and thank you for your voice.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone who have joined us today live and will also join us on the replay. Remember, as you go about the rest of your day, to find the things that are working within your life. You are the creator of your own story. What steps are you going to take next? Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Ryan. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. Thanks.